A poor girl clutches a basket of candy and pleads with the young billionaire. "Please, sir, if I don't sell everything, my brother won't eat today." And his reaction was unbelievable. Grayson Bennett pushed the glass door of the skyscraper harder than he intended. The sound echoed through the lobby as he adjusted the tie that felt like it was choking him. 3 hours of meetings had drained his energy and patience. "Mr. Bennett, your car will be here in 5 minutes." The security guard's voice sounded distant as Grayson waved absent-mindedly. "I'll walk a bit, Richard. Tell the driver he doesn't need to come." The guard seemed surprised, but Grayson was already leaving. The contrast between the building's air conditioning and the city's heat hit him like a punch. 16 floors above, his office was a sanctuary of silence with a view of the entire skyline. Down here, it was a completely different world. He loosened his tie and took a deep breath. The streets pulsed with a life so different from what existed in conference rooms. Vendors, tourists, everyday people rushing to catch the subway. Grayson walked aimlessly, trying to clear his mind of the numbers and charts from the presentation. It was on the 3rd block that he saw the girl. She was much too small to be alone out there. Her messy brown hair fell over wide, watchful eyes that studied every person passing by. In front of her was an old basket with brightly colored candies, arranged by hue. "Candy, mister. $1 each." Grayson stopped. The girl's voice was steady, almost rehearsed, but her hands, small and dirty, trembled slightly. "How much for the whole basket?" he asked, crouching down to her eye level. The girl frowned, confused. It seemed she had never heard that question before. "I don't know. There's a lot of candy." "What's your name?" "Haley," she answered, studying the man in the expensive suit with suspicion. "Nice to meet you, Haley." "I'm Grayson," he smiled, but the girl's expression remained serious. "Why are you selling candy all by yourself?" Haley looked around before answering, as if checking that no one was listening. "If I don't sell everything, my brother doesn't get dinner tonight." Her words hit him like lightning. Direct, with no drama or self-pity, just a cruel fact stated with the blunt simplicity only children can manage. Grayson felt a knot in his throat. It wasn't pity, it was recognition. A distant echo of his own childhood knocking at the door of his conscience. For a moment, he saw himself in her, skinny, hungry Casas with the same shadows in his eyes. "I'll take it all." He pulled out his wallet from the inside pocket of his jacket. Haley's eyes widened. "All of it? All of it? How much do you think it's worth?" The girl thought for a moment, counting mentally. $73. Her voice betrayed the uncertainty of someone afraid to lose the sale by asking too much. Grayson took out a $100 bill and handed it to her. "Keep the change." Haley held the bill as if it might break. She had never seen so much money at once. "You don't need to take the candy," she said suddenly. "You can sell them again." Grayson pointed to the basket. The girl remained still, suspicious of the unexpected kindness. "Why?" "Because I know what it's like to have a hungry sibling," he simply replied. Something changed in Haley's gaze, an unspoken understanding. She tucked the bill into an inside pocket of her worn-out jacket, adjusted the basket, and smiled for the first time, not a smile of joy, but of relief. "Thank you, mister." Grayson nodded and stood up. He began to walk away but glanced back one last time. Haley was already approaching another passerby, as if nothing had happened, as if her life didn't depend on that basket of candy. Hours later, in the penthouse of his apartment, Grayson swirled the whiskey in his glass as he observed the city lights. The encounter with the girl lingered in his mind like a freshly opened wound. He remembered being 8 years old and his mother watering down soup so it would last another meal. The constant feeling of an empty stomach, splitting half a sandwich with his younger sister. The shame of wearing donated clothes at school. 25 years had passed, but hunger has a way of searing itself into memory. The taste of need never completely disappears, even among fancy restaurant dinners and million-dollar business meetings. He placed the glass on the coffee table and walked to the window. Somewhere down there, Haley and her brother might be having their first decent meal in days. But what about tomorrow? And the day after? $100 wouldn't last forever. He tried to push the thought away. He had done his good deed for the day. There were hundreds of kids like her throughout the city. He couldn't save everyone. He took a long shower and lay down, but sleep wouldn't come. Haley's face appeared every time he closed his eyes. That gaze, far too old for a 5-year-old, haunting him. He turned over in bed, trying to think of the next day's presentation, last quarter's numbers, satisfied investors. Nothing worked. "If I don't sell everything, my brother won't eat tonight." The sentence echoed mercilessly. When the clock read 3:17 a.m., Grayson sat on the edge of his bed. He ran his hands over his face and made a decision. He needed to find her again, to learn where she lived, how she lived, whether someone was caring for her and her brother. It wasn't just charity or guilt. It was something deeper, a connection he couldn't explain. That girl, with her tiny basket of candy and burdens far too great for her small shoulders, had broken something inside him, a carefully built wall between his past and present. He lay down again, calmer. Tomorrow, he would go back to that street. Tomorrow, he would find Haley. And this time, he wouldn't let a random encounter end with just $100 and a goodbye. As sleep finally claimed him, Grayson realized that for the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about business, acquisitions, or profits. He was thinking of a basket of colorful candy and the eyes of a little girl carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. And somehow that felt more important than anything else. The meeting room at Bennett Enterprises buzzed with excited voices. The charts on the screen showed green arrows pointing upward, an exceptional quarter. Grayson should have been elated. Instead, he drummed his fingers on the glass table, distracted. "Mr. Bennett, your thoughts on the expansion?" Grayson blinked, returning to reality. All eyes were fixed on him. He forced a smile and straightened in his chair. "Apologies, could you repeat the question?" His assistant, Clara, frowned. In 15 years of working together, she had never seen him so distracted in an important meeting. "I suggest a 10-minute break," she said, efficient as always. When the room emptied, Clara approached him. "Are you okay, Grayson? You seem a million miles away today." "I'm fine." He stood up, rubbing his eyes. "Just a bad night's sleep." He didn't mention the real reason. A 5-year-old girl with a basket of candy who wouldn't leave his thoughts. "Water," Clara offered. "Coffee, as strong as possible." Clara smiled and left, giving him a moment alone with his thoughts. He walked over to the panoramic window. Down below, people looked like ants, always rushing, each living their own life. Somewhere among them, Haley was selling candy again, perhaps. Had the money lasted? Did her brother get to eat? He closed his eyes and dove into memories he rarely revisited. Manhattan 30 years ago. A cramped apartment he shared with his parents and sister. His father, Thomas Bennett, working 2 jobs and still never having enough money. His mother taking on sewing work, accepting any job she could find. He recalled one particular night vividly. He was 7. His father came home late, exhausted, with a small takeout box of Chinese food. "This was all I could manage today," he had said, shame weighing down every word. His mother smiled, dividing the meal into 4 tiny portions, 1 bowl for each. Grayson noticed how his parents ate slowly, pretending to be full, while he and his sister devoured their shares. Years later, he realized they barely ate so the kids would have more. Another memory, his 10th birthday. No party, no friends invited, just a tiny cupcake with a single candle. His father cried when Grayson blew it out, the only gift they could afford. The next morning, Grayson found his father sleeping upright, still in uniform, having worked an overnight shift to buy that cupcake. "Your coffee, extra strong." Clara's voice brought him back to the present. People were trickling back into the meeting room. Grayson thanked her and took a sip, the bitter liquid sharpening his focus, but not enough. For the rest of the day, he signed papers, took calls, and attended 2 more meetings, all on autopilot. His mind constantly drifted back to Haley and the brother he hadn't even met. The girl's resolve, the huge responsibilities on such tiny shoulders, just as he'd felt decades ago. At 5 in the afternoon, he stood up abruptly. "Clara, cancel the rest of my appointments. But the video conference with Tokyo, reschedule for tomorrow." "Say something urgent came up." Clara studied him, concerned, but nodded. She knew him too well to question his tone. 20 minutes later, Grayson was walking down the same stretch of sidewalk where he'd found Haley the day before. He wore simpler clothes this time, jeans and a button-down shirt without a tie, sneakers. He wanted to be less conspicuous. He wandered for almost an hour, scanning every corner, every alley. No sign of the girl. As the sky began to darken, discouragement grew. Maybe she'd found a different spot, or maybe the $100 had been enough and she didn't need to work today. He was about to give up when he saw her. Haley was walking hurriedly, the same empty basket swinging on her arm. She looked even smaller, without the determined posture of a vendor, just a tired child at the end of a long day. Grayson followed from a distance, careful not to be noticed. Haley turned onto a quieter street, then another even less busy. The surroundings changed drastically. Luxury buildings gave way to run-down structures and abandoned lots. She stopped in front of an old trailer, parked at the back of a vacant lot ringed by a low, rusty fence. Grayson hid behind a tree, watching. Haley knocked 3 times on the metal door in a specific rhythm. The door opened, and a small boy practically leaped into her arms. His hair was blonde and disheveled, his clothes too big for his thin frame. He couldn't have been older than 3. "Caleb, careful, you'll knock me over." Haley's voice sounded different, lighter, more childlike. The boy said something Grayson couldn't hear. Haley laughed and showed him the empty basket, then pulled out a handful of crumpled bills from her pocket. The boy's eyes lit up. They both went inside, shutting the door. Grayson waited a few minutes and cautiously approached. The trailer looked even more dilapidated up close, peeling paint, taped-up windows, makeshift concrete blocks for steps. A makeshift home, at best. One of the windows had a torn curtain, allowing him a glimpse of the interior. A cramped space, but surprisingly organized. Haley was putting away what she seemed to have bought on her way. Bread, milk, some fruit Grayson couldn't identify. Little Caleb sat on a thin mattress on the floor, playing with folded paper shapes. There were no adults, no sign of parents or guardians, just 2 kids alone, surviving however they could. The scene was painfully familiar. Grayson remembered looking after his younger sister while their parents worked, making simple sandwiches at age 9, telling stories to distract her from hunger. But he and his sister had parents who came back. They had a secure roof. Haley and Caleb seemed utterly alone. A sound startled Grayson. Haley approached the window to close it. Their eyes almost met. He stepped back quickly, hiding in the shadows. He returned to his car, parked several blocks away, with the image of that trailer burned into his mind. On the drive home, the contrast between his luxurious penthouse and the kids' makeshift shelter felt like a silent accusation. In the comfort of his apartment, Grayson couldn't eat dinner. The fancy, well-prepared meal seemed offensive when he thought of Haley and Caleb splitting a simple loaf of bread. He sat in his personal study and opened his laptop, researching homeless children, legal aid procedures, and relevant social services. The information was disheartening. Bureaucracy, delays, uncertainties. The system was slow, and those kids needed help immediately. He closed the computer and stepped onto the balcony. The city gleamed under the night sky, indifferent to the struggles it sheltered. Somewhere in that sea of lights, 2 children slept in a run-down trailer, counting coins to survive another day. Grayson made a decision. He wouldn't involve the authorities, at least not yet. He would help directly, with food, clothes, maybe improvements to the trailer. He'd approach them gradually, earn their trust. He lay down, calmer now that he had a plan, but sleep was slow to come. When he finally drifted off, he dreamed of his father working late, his mother counting coins at the kitchen table, his sister asking for more food, and in the dream, his father looked at him with tired eyes and said, "One day, when you can, remember those who were left behind." Grayson woke before his alarm, absolutely certain it was no coincidence he'd found Haley. It was a chance to honor a silent promise he'd made to his father so many years ago, a chance to truly make a difference in someone's life. The grocery store was nearly empty at that hour. Grayson pushed his cart down the aisles, carefully selecting each item: rice, beans, pasta, canned goods with a long shelf life, fresh fruit, bread, milk, eggs. In the hygiene aisle, he added soap, shampoo, toothpaste, and new toothbrushes. He stopped in the children's section. Exactly how old was Caleb? He looked about 3, but it was hard to tell. The boy was tiny, likely malnourished. Grayson grabbed diapers in different sizes, baby wipes, and diaper rash cream. He didn't know if Caleb still wore diapers, but better to be prepared. A saleswoman approached, smiling. "Helping a charity organization, sir." Grayson hesitated. Explaining the situation in detail felt too complicated. "Something like that," he answered, turning back to the cart. At the register, the cashier gave him a curious look at the peculiar assortment of items. Grayson ignored it and paid in cash. He carried 6 large bags to his car. It was 10 in the morning when he parked 2 blocks from the trailer. He preferred not to draw attention with his luxury vehicle. Distributing the bags between both hands, he walked to the vacant lot. The place looked even more desolate by daylight. The rusted metal trailer stood out against overgrown weeds and piles of trash. There wasn't a real fence, just scraps of old fencing and twisted wire. He approached carefully. Through the window, he saw movement, a small silhouette. He took a deep breath and knocked on the door 3 times. Silence. He knocked again, more gently. "Haley? It's me, Grayson. We met the day before yesterday." Light footsteps approached. The handle turned slowly, and the door opened just enough to reveal part of Haley's face. Her eyes widened in recognition. "You're the guy who bought all the candy," she said. Not as a question, but a statement. Grayson smiled, lifting the bags. "I brought some things for you. I can leave them right here." Suspicion was clear in her eyes. She opened the door a bit wider, studying the bags. "Why?" It was a simple question, carrying the weight of someone who learned early on that nothing comes free. "Because I understand," Grayson said, keeping his voice soft and calm. "I know what it's like to have to manage on your own. Too early." Haley frowned, pondering his words. Movement behind her revealed Caleb, partially hidden behind a box, watching the stranger with wide eyes. "Your brother?" Grayson asked, waving discreetly at the little boy, who quickly ducked out of sight. Haley glanced back at him, then at Grayson. "That's Caleb. He's shy." Grayson crouched down, placing the bags on the makeshift concrete step. "There's food in here, hygiene items, some clothes I thought might fit, and water." For a moment, he saw conflict in the girl's eyes, need wrestling with pride and distrust. Finally, she said, "Thanks. But you really didn't have to." She tried to sound grown up, but was still just a child trying to be strong. "It's no trouble," Grayson assured her. "When I was a kid, sometimes we had nothing to eat at home. I know how hard it is." This revelation seemed to surprise Haley. She studied the man before her, expensive watch, polished shoes, fine shirt. "But you're rich now," Grayson smiled at the childlike frankness. "I am now, but it wasn't always this way." A sound drew both their attention. Caleb again, curious about the bags. Grayson took the opportunity to peer more closely inside the trailer through the slightly open door. The space was tiny but impressively organized. A thin mattress covered with clean, though faded, sheets took up nearly half the area. Cardboard boxes served as makeshift cabinets, drawings taped to the wall, likely Caleb's handiwork. A small table with 2 stools, everything old, yet kept as tidy as possible. "Do you two live here alone?" Grayson asked, trying not to sound intrusive. Haley's expression hardened. "We know how to take care of ourselves." Her defensive tone was answer enough. Grayson nodded. "I'm sure you do. You're very responsible for your age." Caleb crept closer. Drawn by the bags, Haley whispered something to him. The boy reached out for one of the bags, where the corner of a chocolate bar was visible. "Go ahead," Grayson encouraged, smiling. "There's more in there." Haley hesitated but pulled out the chocolate bar and handed it to Caleb, who clutched it to his chest like a treasure. "I should go now," Grayson said, sensing prolonged interaction might make them uncomfortable. "May I come back tomorrow, bring more things?" Again, that flicker of conflict in Haley's expression. She glanced at her brother, the bags, then at Grayson. "If you want," she answered, shrugging as if indifferent. Grayson nodded and stepped back. "See you tomorrow, then." He started to walk away, but Haley's voice stopped him. "Mr. Grayson, thanks." The gratitude, though terse, was genuine. Grayson smiled and waved as he left. He glanced back once and saw Haley and Caleb in the doorway, hauling the bags inside. For a moment, little Caleb waved timidly before disappearing into the trailer. On his way back to the car, Grayson made mental notes of what else he might bring next time. More suitable clothing for both of them, perhaps toys for Caleb, school supplies for Haley. Did she even attend school? More importantly, he needed to earn their trust, learn their full story. How 2 children so young ended up living alone in an abandoned trailer. The first step was taken. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Grayson got into his car and turned the key, feeling a determination he hadn't experienced in years. Those kids needed help, and he was in a position to provide it. Now he knew where to find them, and he would return tomorrow, the next day, and for as long as it took. As he drove back downtown, one thing became clear in his mind. Haley and Caleb's lives were about to change, and in ways he didn't yet fully grasp, so was his. The next few days established a routine. Grayson arrived around the same time, in late afternoon, when the sun began to lose its intensity. Each visit, he brought a different bag, sometimes food, sometimes clothes, sometimes hygiene items. He never showed up empty-handed. By the 3rd visit, Haley no longer waited behind the door. She sat on the makeshift steps outside, as though she knew exactly when he would appear. Little Caleb still hid inside, but his curious eyes peeked out from the window. "I brought something special today," Grayson announced on the 4th visit, taking a seat on the concrete step beside Haley. The girl eyed the brightly colored bag with suspicion. "What is it?" "It's not for you," Grayson replied with a smile. "It's for Caleb." As if he'd heard his name, the boy appeared in the half-open doorway. His blonde hair was now cleaner, likely thanks to the products Grayson had brought days ago. Grayson pulled a small red toy car from the bag, not very big but shiny, with wheels that really turned. Caleb's eyes went wide. "Can I give it to him?" Grayson asked Haley, respecting her role as her brother's protector. Haley hesitated but nodded. Grayson held out the toy. "It's yours, Caleb." The boy looked at his sister, who gestured approval. He slowly approached and took the car from Grayson's hand. The moment his fingers touched the shiny plastic, it happened. The first genuine smile, one that lit up his entire face. "What do you say, Caleb?" Haley prompted. "Thank you," the boy mumbled, hugging the toy. A warmth spread through Grayson's chest. That smile, so simple, so natural, was worth more than any $1 million deal he'd ever closed. Caleb sat right there on the packed dirt, pushing the car back and forth, making engine noises with his mouth, completely absorbed in his new treasure. "He loves cars," Haley remarked, watching her brother. "He always stops at the toy store window when we walk by." For the first time, Haley had initiated a conversation. Grayson considered that a small victory. "And you? What do you like?" he asked. The girl shrugged. "I don't have much time to like stuff." The response, so mature and sad, broke Grayson's heart. "Have you two been here a long time? Alone, I mean?" Haley was silent for several seconds, as if deciding whether to trust him. Finally, she spoke. "Almost a year. Our dad left when Caleb was 2. He just never came home from work one day." Her eyes fixed on a distant point. "Mom said he found another family, a better one." Grayson didn't interrupt, letting her speak at her own pace. "Then Mom got sick. She coughed and had fevers and was always so tired." Haley fidgeted with the hem of her shirt. "One day she said she was going to the hospital to get medicine. She told me to watch Caleb until she came back that night." Her voice faltered slightly. "She never came back. Not that night. Not the next day." "How long has it been?" Grayson asked gently. "I'm not sure. Lots of days." Caleb still wore diapers. Grayson did a mental calculation. If Caleb was around 3 now and all this happened when he was still in diapers, so how did you end up here, in this trailer? "We couldn't stay in the apartment. The landlord came, and I hid with Caleb. After he left, I took our stuff and we left." Haley spoke in a disturbingly matter-of-fact tone. "We walked a lot, slept on the street a few nights. Then we found this abandoned trailer." The story, told with such simplicity, concealed a harrowing truth. A 4-year-old girl, alone with a baby, wandering the streets. "Didn't anyone try to help you? Neighbors, friends? Mom always said not to trust anyone, that they'd take us away, separate me and Caleb." Haley looked at her brother, still immersed in playing with his car. "I couldn't let that happen." Grayson felt a lump in his throat. This child had taken on a staggering amount of responsibility. "You know, Haley, I also grew up in a home where we barely had anything." She eyed him with skepticism. "But you drive a big car and have fancy clothes." "Now I do. But when I was your age, sometimes we didn't even have dinner." Grayson studied his hands, recalling, "My dad worked 2 jobs. My mom sewed for extra money. Even then, it was never enough." Haley watched him intently, looking for signs of a lie. "Once, I spent 3 days eating only stale bread with water and sugar. My younger sister cried from hunger. I gave her my share." "Like I do with Caleb," Haley whispered. "Exactly like you do," Grayson said, smiling gently. "You're very brave, you know that." The girl didn't reply, but something shifted in her expression. The distrust in her eyes receded slightly, replaced by understanding, shared experiences bridging the gap between them. The sun began to set. Caleb, tired of playing, inched closer to Grayson until he was practically sitting beside him, still holding his car. "It's getting cold," Grayson noted, feeling the temperature drop. Haley stood. "We better go inside." She looked at Grayson and, after a moment's hesitation, added, You can come too, so we don't have to leave the stuff outside." The invitation, phrased so practically, was a huge step of trust. Grayson nodded, trying not to show his surprise. "Sure. Thank you." The inside of the trailer was even smaller than it looked from outside. It couldn't have been more than a few square feet. A tiny camping stove occupied one corner, along with a box serving as a pantry. The thin mattress took up nearly half the floor space. A makeshift curtain divided off what was probably a tiny bathroom. Still, despite the evident poverty, everything was tidy and organized. Colorful drawings by Caleb covered part of one wall, taped up. A few clothes were folded in cardboard boxes. A battery-powered lantern hung from the ceiling by a string. "It's small," Haley said, as though apologizing. "It's cozy," Grayson corrected, "and you keep it really clean." "That's important." A hint of pride lit up her face. Caleb, now completely comfortable, grabbed Grayson's hand and pulled him over to show off his drawings. "Car," he said, pointing to colorful scribbles. "Tree, house. They're wonderful," Grayson praised, crouching down to see them better. "You're an artist." Caleb beamed, proud, and continued displaying his treasures. A shiny pebble, a bird feather, a colorful bottle cap. Haley watched with a mix of caution and relief. Her little brother, normally so shy around strangers, had opened up to Grayson. Then Grayson noticed the basket in a corner, worn and fraying in places, the same one Haley used to sell candy. So small, yet their only source of income. "Is that how you buy food?" he asked, pointing to the basket. Haley nodded. "I get candy at the corner store. The man there gives me a discount." She paused. "But now there are fewer people on the street. Sometimes I come back with a lot of candy left and only a little money." Grayson glanced at the basket, then back at the siblings. A decision formed in his mind. "Haley, you don't have to sell candy anymore." The girl frowned. "How will we buy food?" "I'll bring whatever you need. Food, clothes, anything. You won't go hungry or lack anything." "I promise." Haley swallowed hard. Her eyes revealed her inner turmoil, wanting to believe but terrified of another disappointment. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why are you doing this for us?" Grayson thought for a moment. "Because someone should have done it for me when I was a kid," he said gently. "And because you deserve better than this trailer and a basket of candy." Silence filled the tiny space. Caleb, oblivious to the gravity of the conversation, played with his new car. Haley seemed to be testing the sincerity of Grayson's words. "People always leave," she finally said, almost in a whisper. "Not everyone." Grayson sensed it was time to go. He didn't want to overwhelm them. He stood, straightening his shirt. "I'll come back tomorrow, okay? I'll bring dinner." Haley nodded, walking him to the door. Caleb waved excitedly, babbling something about car and come back. At the threshold, Haley looked up, meeting Grayson's eyes. For the first time, her expression was completely open, vulnerable. "If you do come back for real." Her words were simple but carried the weight of every abandonment that child had endured. It wasn't a casual request, it was a test of trust. "I will come back," Grayson promised. "Always." As he walked back to his car, Grayson realized this was no longer just a charitable act. He genuinely cared about these children, their stories, their lives, their future, in a way he couldn't rationally explain. The next day, as promised, he returned, and the day after that, and the next. A week passed. He reorganized his schedule, delegated meetings, worked remotely when possible. Nothing seemed more important than being there for Haley and Caleb. It was on his 10th visit that he sensed something was wrong. Caleb was quiet, seated on Haley's lap. His cheeks were flushed, and he didn't rush over to show off his drawings as usual. "What's going on?" Grayson asked, kneeling to their level. "He's hot," Haley explained, her worry evident. "Since last night. I've been giving him water, but it's not helping." Grayson touched the boy's forehead. It was burning. The child was breathing heavily, and a dry cough occasionally shook his small body. "This is a high fever, Haley. He needs a doctor." Panic flashed across her face. "We can't go to the hospital. They'll ask questions. They'll take us away." "He's sick," Grayson insisted gently. "It could be serious." Caleb coughed again, a harsh sound that didn't belong in the chest of a little boy. Haley held him tighter, rocking him gently. "What if we don't come back?" she whispered, fear shining in her eyes. Grayson took her small hand in his. "I promise you'll come back. Together. He'll take care of this." Haley looked at her brother. Caleb's eyes were half closed, clearly lacking energy. She made her decision. "Okay, but you have to stay with us the whole time." "All the time," Grayson agreed, as he helped the girl gather their things and wrap Caleb in a clean blanket. Grayson realized they were entering a new chapter. It wouldn't be easy to explain at the hospital. Questions would be asked, authorities might get involved. But looking at those two children, Haley trying to be brave, Caleb burning with fever, Grayson knew he'd do whatever it took to protect them, whatever it took to keep his promise. And as he carried Caleb to the car, Haley clinging to his free hand, he understood that his life would never be the same. The pediatric ER waiting room was bustling. Nurses hurried down corridors. Anxious parents comforted crying children. Grayson sat rigidly, Haley glued to his side, both their eyes on the door behind which Caleb had disappeared 20 minutes earlier. The nurse had tried to convince Haley to wait outside, but she'd refused, clinging to her brother. Only the promise that she'd see him soon had persuaded her to sit and wait. "Is it going to take long?" Haley asked for the third time, her small voice betraying a fear she tried to hide. "We'll be able to go in soon," Grayson said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. The questions at the reception desk had been challenging. Relationship to the children, documents, medical history. Grayson improvised as best he could, claiming to be a close relative temporarily caring for them. His platinum credit card and a few discreet bills pressed into the administrative supervisor's hand smoothed the process. "Mr. Bennett?" A young doctor with a stethoscope around her neck approached. "Could you come with me, please?" Haley leapt to her feet, grabbing Grayson's hand. Together, they followed the doctor down a hallway to a small room where Caleb lay. He looked even tinier in the hospital bed, connected to a monitor with an oxygen mask covering much of his face. His eyes lit up when he saw his sister. Haley ran to him, gently touching his hand. "It's okay, Caleb, I'm here," she whispered, her voice maternal enough to break anyone's heart. The doctor gestured for Grayson to step back into the hallway. Reluctantly, he asked Haley to stay with her brother for a moment. Out in the corridor, the doctor's expression turned serious. "Mr. Bennett, Caleb has early-stage bacterial pneumonia. We caught it in time, but it's concerning." Grayson's chest tightened. "How serious is it?" "With proper treatment, he should make a full recovery. We've started IV antibiotics and oxygen therapy." She hesitated. "But there's something that worries me more than this current infection." "What is it?" "Their living conditions." The doctor looked him in the eye. "We found signs of prolonged exposure to humidity, mold, possible mild malnutrition. Caleb's antibodies are low, indicating a compromised immune system from inadequate conditions." Grayson swallowed hard. The trailer, no matter how hard Haley tried to keep it clean, was damp and precarious. "I understand. What do you recommend?" "Medically, he needs a clean, dry, heated environment to recover and avoid relapse." She lowered her voice. "Mr. Bennett, I have to ask, what is your real relationship to these children?" "Haley barely speaks to our staff, but it's clear she depends on you." Grayson hesitated. The truth could complicate everything. "I'm caring for them temporarily. I'm a family friend." The doctor didn't seem convinced, but nodded. "As a physician, I must be clear. If Caleb returns to the same environment where he got pneumonia, he'll likely get sick again. And every infection makes his respiratory system more vulnerable to the next." Her words hung in the air like a sentence. Grayson thanked her and went back to the room, where Haley was humming softly to her brother, who seemed calmer now that she was there. During the next few hours, as Grayson watched the siblings, an internal conflict raged. He couldn't just take them back to the trailer. Caleb's health was at stake. But what was the alternative? Social services could mean almost certain separation. A temporary shelter would be traumatic, and he'd promised Haley he wouldn't let them be split up. Grayson Bennett did not break promises. As night fell, Haley fought sleep, determined to stay awake at her brother's bedside. Caleb was sleeping now, fever reduced thanks to the medication. "Is he going to be okay?" Haley asked, her voice trembling with exhaustion. "Yes, he will," Grayson replied, sitting beside her. "But the doctor said he needs a warm, clean place so he doesn't get sick again." Haley, always so perceptive, locked eyes with him. "We can't go back to the trailer." It wasn't a question, but a statement. That childlike maturity of hers continued to astonish him. "No, Haley, at least not right now." The silence that followed was heavy. The girl looked at her sleeping brother, his small chest rising and falling more steadily now. "Will they separate us?" she finally asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Send us to different places." The vulnerability in her question pierced Grayson like a spear. He knelt in front of her, holding her gaze. "No. I promised I wouldn't let that happen, remember?" She nodded, still not fully convinced. "I have an idea," Grayson continued.